If you cannot stand the heat, get out of the kitchen sink. This is a story that happened to me when I was in a trial to be an apprentice to a baker. That baker really didn't want me to be his apprentice and would constantly stop his own work to micromanage me. For example, he once dropped a tray of dough rolls on the floor to make me change my hand's placement on a broom. Crazy stuff. He also seemed unable to speak below a yell, and one of his favorite sentences to shout was, "If you cannot stand the heat, get out of the kitchen." Incidentally, one of my tasks was to clean the pastry-making equipment, and if you've ever worked with chocolate, you know that stuff needs to be rinsed at a high temperature, or it won't come off properly. One day, I decided that I would also fill the sink with hot, soapy, steamy water. It so happens that my hands have a somewhat high resistance to heat. Still, it was so hot that I couldn't spend too much time submerged in the water. No gloves allowed. But I tell you, that equipment was gleaming when I was done with it.
Q. Surprise. PettyRevenges.
As I was busy cleaning, the baker stood behind me and thrust his entire arm in the scalding water. To his credit, he didn't utter so much as a peep. He sprang back, stared at me, and walked away. I think he believed little Danny me couldn't have prepared a hot enough tub for the chocolate-covered utensils. I left some time later, but the memory of that hulk of a man looking down in horror at tiny me is one of the most cherished parts of this whole experience. Revenge on my sister. This one is short and sweet. Me and my sister, like many siblings, have had our fair share of arguments, and this one was over a charging cable like 4 years ago. So my sister, 17, broke my phone charger, so I, 20, was borrowing hers while I waited to get another. This day she just flat out refused and was being Miss Grumpy about it, so when she went downstairs, I snuck into her room and took all the fuses out. Charge it now, you fucker, middle finger, medium light skin tone. Safe to say she was very confused and then pissed, so we came to a truce handshake. She still annoys me now. Catcall me at school? I'm exposing your ass. So this happened a few months ago. I am someone who in school gets harassed and bullied a lot. Neurodivergent, gay, Jewish, goth girl problems, IG. And there is this one guy that transferred to our school around the start of the year. He joined the group of people that give me shit and decided his way of doing it was by asking me out constantly. Now, you might be thinking he's just being nice, but I assure you, he wasn't. There's this thing a lot of kids do, mainly guys, where they ask a seemingly undesirable girl out as a joke with the punchline being they'd never want to date them. I know now it's because my personality is unappealing to sexist boys and men, but as a kid it royally fucked with me because they made me think I was super ugly and caused a boatload of self-esteem issues. So I found this very annoying. He'd keep doing it, always in front of his friends, to show off, I guess. It wasn't about getting me to go out with him. It was about making boys laugh at my expense and affirming his masculinity. I know this because he never did it when he was on his own, only when his friends were around. He's also very transphobic towards his brother and my sister. Side note, my cousin found out the reason he had it out for me was because he thinks I fake my mental illnesses and neurological disorders despite knowing nothing about them, so he'd an ableist white knight too. Fake disorder cringe is majority bullying, autistic/ADHD, people who aren't straight cishet white boys who like trains and puzzles, so you can tell the kinds of ideologies he holds. So, one time I was on my way back from school and he did his usual, "How are you? I'm totally your friend. Give me your snap" routine. Funny thing is, he used to go to my nursery and wasn't anything like he currently is. So I decided to expose a little tidbit I remembered. "Would you like me to take in my Monster High dolls like you begged me to in primary school?" He was kind of gagged, stumbling to find a response as he desperately tried to laugh it off and stay cool. But by then, my sister and I were round the bend. Now there is nothing wrong with a cishet guy liking Monster High. Gender is a constantly shifting social construct, and just do what you want. But these kinds of shitty boys so not agree with me on that, and it's clearly something he's very embarrassed about. He hasn't harassed me since. TLDR, guy kept catcalling me. I exposed his interest in dolls, and he left me alone. Ex-girlfriend thought my gin and tonic was too gay. This was back in 2016, and I'd started going out with a really good-looking girl who was a bit younger than me. We were at a restaurant bar once, waiting for a table and having cocktails. I ordered a gin and tonic, and I must admit it looked a bit over the top. Bartender dude wanted to impress and put a lot of fancy things in the drink. You know, like the floating little flower, some pink peppercorns. New girlfriend says, Are you really gonna drink that? It looks very gay for a man. I hate homophobes and was kinda shocked, and I know I should have just broken up with her right there. But she looked so good. I thought I could teach her a lesson. She went to the toilet and I told the bartender, man, I'm gonna order something real simple, but you gotta fancy it the fuck up to make it look as rainbowy as possible. So when she got back from the toilet, I ordered a screwdriver and bartender dude properly delivered. He gave me a screwdriver with a fucking peacock and half a rainforest coming out of it. New girlfriend wasn't impressed. So, next day I ordered a bunch of mini cocktail umbrellas online, and I always kept a few in my pocket whenever I'd go out with her. Shot of Jägermeister? I managed to stick an umbrella there. Bottle of beer? Mini umbrella in it. I put so many mini umbrellas in all sorts of non-umbrella friendly drinks. I must still have some photos somewhere. She always looked kinda embarrassed about me drinking those. I ended up breaking up with her a few months later. I met her back in January, and she's now deeply religious, and I think I dodged a bullet there. Deckhand Tyrese and the Ballast caps. I once had a deckhand on a ship I was on. I am a commercial mariner named Tyrese. Tyrese was about 15 years younger than me and had a chip on his shoulder a mile wide. He lived to piss you off and seemed to almost take pride in doing a poor job in everything, if for no other reason than to demonstrate his contempt for you. He was late 20s, but seemed to behave like an angry teenager sometimes. I have lots of stories about Tyrese, but this was the first one. Tyrese and I would take turns sounding, measuring the amount of water inside the ballast tanks. To sound the ballast tanks, you had to unscrew a cap to access the pipe for sounding it and send down a measuring tape. Although the cap had a square fitting for a special opening tool, there was no reason to tighten it when closing. The 20 or so sounding tubes we had were all inside the ship, spread around the cargo holds, and not in any danger of getting contaminated with anything like rainwater or waves. And the wrench was a 2-foot, 60 centimeters, tool that was a hassle to lug around. So, you could just tighten them by hand, skip the tool, and loosen them when it came time to sound the tank. Tyrese and I would take turns doing this, once a week. After his second time doing the soundings, I noticed that about 1/3 of the caps were too tight for me to open, and I had to go back and get a wrench for the remaining tight ones. The next day, I asked him not to tighten the caps so much, as there was no reason to. Just get them snug with your fingers. He had just recently been disciplined by me for being on his phone at work, again, and was still a bit salty. Sure enough, the following week, every single ballast cap was too tight for me to open. I asked him again not to tighten them so much. Just snug them up with your fingers is fine. I asked him if there was any reason every single cap was too tight for me to open, and why he didn't just finger snug them. His response? I just tightened them by hand. I guess your grip just ain't strong enough, mate.
Ok, Tyrese.
I again showed him how to close them without over-tightening them too much, but the next time around, it was the same thing. As I headed back up to the main deck to grab the opening tool, inspiration struck. After sounding all of the tanks, I made sure to tighten them just a little more than Tyrese would be able to do by hand. Sure enough, the following week, Tyrese, who was not blessed with much in the way of critical thinking, had to lug the wrench around to all 24 ballast-sounding tubes, and at break, he was irate that I had tightened them so much. My response of, I just tightened them by hand. I guess your grip just ain't strong enough, Tyrese, went right over his head, so I put on my good leader cap. Tyrese, I don't like having to lug around that damn wrench all over the ship to open ballast caps any more than you do. I showed you how to close ballast caps, but I guess it hasn't gotten through to you. Maybe this will. If I have to carry that goddamn wrench with me all over the ship, I'ma make damn sure you got to do the same. Now, are we clear? I could almost see the light bulb over his head. Ached, he said and walked away. He only over-tightened 2 ballast caps after that, likely to test me. I returned the favor on both of them, and it never happened again. My mom's petty revenge on a coworker. Well, I don't think this is that petty, but here goes. Okay, so my 16M, mom, 47F, is a director/principal of a daycare that is open 2 days a week. It is in the same building as a church, so members of the church are sometimes in the building during the daycare hours. The daycare has a time of day called chapel. It is where the kids sing songs, dance, and have story time. It takes place in the sanctuary/auditorium. The auditorium is on a different half of the church as most of the daycare takes place. Well, anyways, there is this one church member who we'll call Greg. Greg is an older man who is retired whose son-in-law is the preacher of the church the daycare takes place. Well, Greg sometimes decides to make visits whenever he pleases. Greg has this one knack on wanting the doors between the auditorium half of the church and the daycare half of the church closed. He always comes up to my mom annoyed and or angry if they are ever left open. A few examples. One day 8 teachers were out, so things were hectic and behind schedule, so the doors were left open for a longer time. Greg waltzed up angry saying, "Why are the doors open?" My mom answered that many workers were out sick and they were behind schedule, therefore not yet finished chapel. Another time 2 of the classrooms had the AC broken, so my mom let them go to rooms on the other half of the church. She left the doors open for safety reasons, of course. Greg was not happy. He said, "Why are the doors open?" My mom said she let a class go to a corner room. Greg yelled, "No, they are upstairs." My mom replied, "Yes, another class went upstairs because of the broken AC, and that she was doing her best." Greg responded, "Well, your best isn't enough." So me hearing this made me furious, and being part of the petty community had an idea. I told my mom to leave the doors cracked open just a little, to see how Greg would react. It hasn't happened as of yet, but I will keep y'all updated. Note: Greg doesn't even work at the church nor the daycare. He just decides to walk in as he pleases. Edit. Hopefully this is easier to read. Smiley face. Edit 2. Now it's worse and don't know how to fix it, sorry, sad face. Edit 3. Apologies, I don't know how to make it with paragraphs. Roommate won't rack the toilet paper. Short and simple. I have 3 weeks left of my lease, and I'm in double with a terrible roommate who doesn't have normal human logical. Homie has been being a dick and lying ever since I've been here. LSS, he doesn't put the toilet paper roll on the wall and just leaves it above the toilet. Doesn't even replace it, even when it's all out, and he physically grabs it from the stack next to it. I have a discreet bag in the kitchen with extra cleaning supplies, i.e. paper towels, bags, toilet paper, etc. I took one, keep it in my room, and whenever I go to the bathroom I bring it. There's none in the bathroom. I found paper towels in the bin. Yep, he deserves that shit. I acted based off of circumstantial evidence and ended up with a confession. This is a very long story and I apologize for that in advance. My ex-husband was awful nasty to me through the entire divorce process. It took 22 months after I left him for the divorce to become finalized. The man was belittling me every chance he got, counter-parenting in every way, lying to the police about having been assaulted. 2x. I never had any problem with my ex-husband's girlfriend until she started acting nasty towards me. I don't even know her, and I sure don't want my ex-husband back, so I'm not even feeling any animosity. Without ever even introducing herself, this girl has yelled at me about sending my own son to daycare with diapers, and she frequently sends me insults from my ex-husband's phone, using her own texting style and saying things like, "I'll be in your son's life whether you like it or not." I was also receiving an insane amount of sexual harassment and harassment from fake numbers after I left my ex, and I did trace it back to him, or his girlfriend, one of the two. The sexual harassment began in August 2022, and I knew that it was coming from somebody I knew because they included names of people I know personally and used a local area code. Most of the time, I immediately received sexual harassment via graphic sexual language or graphic sexual pictures. Perpetrator used a mixture of male and female sexual pictures on different numbers. But sometimes this would start as a tattoo inquiry before I began handing my number on business cards, and up to an hour of my time would be wasted as the perpetrator would jump into, "Well, can't you just tattoo me at my house? I like girls, you're hot. I want to F***ku. It would start off as a phone call a lot too. I was terrified to answer my phone. It was weird as hell, and I blocked every number that sexually harassed me since August of 2022, and it equates to be over 1,000 different numbers. Up to 3 numbers a day were blocked. I admittedly didn't even suspect that this way my ex-husband / his new girlfriend's doing until January of 24. Once I suspected it was them, I started sending my ex-husband's phone number over, sext me more at ex-husband's hashtag. I stopped nearly 2 years worth of daily, aggressive sexual harassment by sending my ex-husband's hashtag over 4 times. About 3 weeks after I received what I thought was the last bit of sexual harassment, I received a message from a fake Facebook account for the second time since August 2022. This message said, "I cannot wait to see you around, you ugly-ass bitch face with tears of joy. My correct street address, correct?" The same fake profile also left a nasty review including my first and maiden name 3 weeks prior to messaging me with, "I came here and got a tattoo by my name, and I can say I will regret it for the rest of my life." You could tell she was unprofessional and crazy. Will not be coming back. This was left on a tattoo shop page that I have never been associated with as it was in an entirely different country. So I messaged my ex-husband about it, stating that I was aware that the fake Facebook profiles were created at his house. After not receiving any response for a few hours, I asked him, "Were you aware that your girlfriend has been sexually harassing me from burner numbers for nearly 2 years?" After not receiving any sexual harassment for nearly 3 weeks, I received sexual harassment from a new number within merely hours of sending my ex that message. There were a couple other things that led me to believe that this was my ex-husband's girlfriend as well. The local police wouldn't do anything. So I wrote to the corporate office of her place of work with a strongly worded email with some background information of the situation, my displeasure of ex-husband's girlfriend's behavior, and the opinion that individuals in a position of management should not be behaving this poorly. They launched a better investigation than the local police did. I recently filed for a PPO against my ex-husband for unrelated incidents, citing that I also have enough circumstantial evidence to confidently say that my ex-husband and/or his new girlfriend have been sexually harassing me for nearly 2 years. Standing in the courtroom in front of the judge, my ex-husband said, about those fake Facebook's accounts and phone numbers, "My girlfriend was actually already talked to about that at her work 6 days after coming back from maternity leave. So, enjoy waiting for the court." Recently, me and my girlfriend were playing some basketball on some new courts that had been installed recently near our house. We were playing happily and other families around us were using some of the 5-side pitches and other courts, etc. All was well until a group of, let's say, chavvy types rock up and just start standing on the court. We felt it was a bit strange but didn't say anything to them as they hadn't approached us, and we carried on playing. Then as we were playing soon after, they decided to start using the same hoop we were using with their own basketball and being loud and generally aggravating. They hadn't said anything to us at this point, and I was fairly certain they were trying to intimidate us by saying things under their breath but loud enough to hear, like being back at school. And of course we were outnumbered 4-2. My partner was getting a bit annoyed by this point and I could tell she wanted to say something, but I insisted we ignore them loud enough for them to hear. So eventually they get bored and decide to await until we're finished. They move into the kids' park next, to the court, and light up some weed. This is in the morning in a kids' park with kids and parents around. You know, the classy type. Anyway, by this point a man and 2 small children who had missed all the affray had entered the court with their own ball and were waiting patiently. So immediately we surrendered the court to them, and seeing these kids get so excited about playing some basketball was so perfect, and the man was very thankful too. Walking away and seeing these chavs realize they were going to have to wait even longer now. My girlfriend loved the pettiness, and we laughed about it the rest of the day. Just goes to show, don't be a dick and people may be more accommodating to you. Husband gives epic petty gift after ongoing boomer neighbor issues. I was told this story would be appreciated here, beaming face with smiling eyes. We moved into a rental house in a neighborhood with our 3 kids, and the day after we moved in, our boomer neighbor, let's call him Gene, knocked on our door after my husband left for work. When I answered the door, he skipped all pleasantries and introductions to gruffly inform me that the light switch in my family room closet needed to be turned off immediately, and that it was my duty to ensure that it was kept off. Obviously puzzled by this demand, I asked what the switch was for. Gene said that the switch was for an exterior patio light that would shine into his bedroom at night and keep him awake, which was not acceptable. I figured the kids had turned it on while exploring the new house, so I assured him I'd turn it off. Without another word, he turned on his heel and went home. Unfortunately, my rude Gene encounters persisted during the 18 months we lived there. He would wait for my husband to leave, then come and complain and gripe at me about something we had done wrong. Our dogs would loudly sniff at the fence if he was outside. Our sprinkler was spraying too high. Our trash can was too close to his, etc., etc. Our other neighbors adored us and our kids, so I really don't think we were the problem. I finally stopped answering the door, so he started leaving notes and even went as far as to find me on Facebook and send a message there. Just the worst. Husband tried to talk to him and tell him to leave me alone, but he denied any wrongdoing. Reasoning with him was pointless, so we made the decision to just ignore him the best we could. We were finally moving to a new place out of town, and my husband went back to do the final walkthrough of the house. When he left for the final time, he called me and to let me know he had a gift for me. The last thing he did before locking the door and leaving that house for good? Turning on the patio light switch in the closet, knowing full well the landlord wouldn't be there for final cleaning for 4 days. Faced with tears of joy, best gift ever. I still laugh when I think about it.